Hello, my name is Sheila Najad. I use she, her pronouns. This is Ruby, and I'm running for mayor of Minneapolis. I believe that the best solutions come from people who are leading change on the ground. I've been a community organizer and policy analyst for over 10 years. My motto is from the streets to the spreadsheets. I've been leading campaigns at City Hall for safety beyond policing for years. In my work with Reclaim the Block, we've moved millions of dollars that went on to create the Office of Violence Prevention and alternatives to policing, like the mobile mental health response teams. As mayor, I'll fight for real safety solutions that address the core causes of harm and violence in our communities and build true racial justice. I got an early start in cross-cultural movement building by way of my birth. I was born in Fargo to a Persian immigrant father and an Anishinaabe Norwegian-Swedish mother. I moved to Minneapolis 12 years ago to get my master's degree in public policy from the Humphrey School. I built working class solidarity as a restaurant worker and later union member, was board president of the Lyndale Neighborhood Association and lifelong renter. My campaign is called Sheila for the People because I want elected leaders who make it easy for everyday people to be involved in the decisions that affect our lives. From the streets to the spreadsheets, I hope you can join me. Check out more about me and our campaign at SheilaForThePeople.com. Thank you.
I'm Kate Canoos. I'm a mom, a climate strategist, a scholar, a small business owner, and a former state representative. I'm running to be the next mayor of Minneapolis because we need leadership. Growing up, my parents instilled in me a love of community. In our family, a good life is defined by being part of and serving our community. It's a value my husband and I work hard to model with our daughter today. Following my 6 years of legislative service, I led a leadership program at the University of Minnesota. I served as our city's first chief resilience officer and earned my PhD. I now run my own small business and serve on the Bryn Mawr Neighborhood Association board. I know how to use public institutions, like our local government, to help us navigate this era of climate change, racial reckoning, and economic injustice, so every person, Black, Brown, Native, Asian, and white, thrives. I keep an eye to where we need to go while figuring out the step-by-step details about how to get there. Right now, in Minneapolis, we are at a potentially transformative moment that will define us for decades. We can all feel it in the unsteadiness of things, the conflict, the uncertainty. These feelings are not surprising. We're still moving through a global pandemic. We're aching from the trauma of police murdering George Floyd and the unrest and racial reckoning unleashed. The question I ask now is whether we will use this moment to build the Minneapolis we know is possible. I believe with real leadership, we can. I believe that with the right leadership, we can reimagine what our city is capable of being. It means not playing on people's fears about public safety, but rather doing the collaborative work of transitioning us to a public safety system that is racially just and keeps every person in the city safe. Realizing the potential of this moment will take courage from all of us. It takes courage to imagine a future different and so much better than where we are, and it takes courage to actually build that future together. The only way we will develop the courage to imagine and build is by leaning into each other and pulling out what is best in each of us. As I step forward to run for mayor, I ask you to join me, because I know together we can do the hard, joyful work of building our city's future. I hope to earn your support in this convention.
I'm Jacob Fry, mayor of Minneapolis. Our city is at the center of a national racial reckoning. George Floyd's murder at the hands of police has been recognized by the courts as just that, murder. But that verdict is the most basic measure of accountability that can be afforded to the Black community, one that's been historically denied. And these cycles of tragedy and trauma aren't going to interrupt themselves. We've been doing the hard work. Our administration has invested more than any in city history to build inclusive community safety systems and support violence prevention. We've implemented progressive policies that promote accountability and transparency in the police department and worked alongside the community to rebuild trust. But we shortchange this conversation if we limit it to community safety and policing. We've done big things over the last 3 years, from record-setting investments in affordable housing production and preservation to building new programs like Stable Homes, Stable Schools, which has effectively served thousands of public school children, over 90% of whom are BIPOC, and designing intentional vehicles like cultural districts and the Commercial Property Development Fund for targeted investments in BIPOC neighborhoods. We've also navigated unprecedented challenges together, from a global pandemic to an economic downturn to the murder of George Floyd. We've taken up difficult conversations and done the hard work, and we're only getting started. So let's have that dialogue. Let's chart a course, but let's not trade this opportunity for transformational change for the theoretical. Black residents are eyeing this moment with well-earned skepticism, and so we must be specific about the changes we want to see, dedicating ourselves to serious policymaking and dislodging objects previously considered immovable. Whatever the consequence or the audience, you have my word. I'll tell you the truth. I won't minimize the challenges to achieving progress. I'll continue being a principled leader, guiding this city to not just better times, but a fundamentally more just Minneapolis. Thank you, and I ask for your support.
Hi, Minneapolis. I'm Jerrell Perry, a lifetime resident of the Twin Cities, proud father of two beautiful little girls, whose future tomorrow depends on the work that we are able to do today. Which brings us to the moment we are currently living through, the most pivotal moment in our city's 171-year history, starting with COVID-19. We're still walking around with masks in every pocket on our jeans and every zipper in our purses. We're washing and sanitizing our hands now more than we ever have before. Social distancing 6 feet down to 3 feet in some places. What more can we do? We can make sure that vaccinations are ready, available to every Minneapolis resident that's willing to take one. We can make sure our children are back in school full time with full functioning before and after school programming, as well as our recreation centers. And we can make sure that everybody gets back to work. We can do this, you guys. We can also do police reform by first mandating that deadly force only be used against deadly force. We can go into crime prevention, including crime and violence committed by individuals with firearms. And we can implement youth outreach and engagement programs and also bring them good paying jobs. We can eradicate hunger and homelessness in Minneapolis through the Housing First program and get our brothers and sisters off the street by building more public housing structures with income capped at 30% to pay rent. No more than 30% going towards rent. We can also eradicate application fees and the need for credit checks for anything outside of rental history. Racial reconciliation can come through the Justice Resolution, which will make much needed investments in communities across our city. And at the same time, it will move us closer to opening the intersection at 30th in Chicago, affectionately known as George Floyd Square. We can also do racial reconciliation through community engagement, using churches and faith leaders to bring their different congregations together to fellowship so we can see just how similar we are, starting with our humanity. I did not enter this race because I'm the most educated or hold the most pedigrees. I entered it because I feel like we are in desperate need of leadership that is not only willing to say the right words, but that's willing to take the right actions. In my experience, I think I am more able than do that for you. Thank you, and I look forward to serving you, Minneapolis. Love your neighbor as yourself. God bless.
I believe that better parks are possible, and we can make these critical community spaces more people-focused, equitable, and inclusive for everyone. Hi, I'm Tom Olson, and I'm running for Park Board Commissioner at large. I have several years of experience working in government and politics throughout the state, including at the Attorney General's Office, the Minnesota Center for Environmental Advocacy, the Minneapolis Community Environmental Advisory Commission, and at the Minnesota House DFL, where I currently work as a communications specialist. In my current role, I work with several legislators and the People of Color and Indigenous Caucus, which has ingrained a racial equity approach into everything I do. Each of these experiences has taught me how to build bridges and work with folks from diverse backgrounds and across the political spectrum. I understand that many of the issues we deal with at the Park Board are nuanced and require the consideration of multiple viewpoints. As an at-large commissioner, I will represent every community and take into consideration the needs and desires of everyone. Yet Minneapolis is home to some of the worst racial disparities and segregation in the nation, and I see it as my job to intentionally uplift and empower the voices of our Black, Brown, and Indigenous communities. There's so much we can do to uplift our community spaces, open parkways to pedestrians, empower our youth voices, and to treat our unhoused neighbors with dignity and respect. There's more to discuss, but know that my moral philosophy centered on equity, community, and the environment will guide my decisions as your commissioner. I look forward to working with and learning from you all. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Londell French, Minneapolis Park Commissioner. I'm asking for your endorsement for re-election to the Minneapolis Park Board. In the past few years, our parks have become more essential to the fabric of Minneapolis. With the COVID pandemic, the murder of George Floyd, and the uprising that followed. Our parks have been everything. As we spent more time outside to social distance, to heal, to gather, to feed people, and distribute mutual aid to our communities, we faced more complex issues and challenges than I could have ever imagined when I was first elected 3 years ago. I'm asking for your vote so I can continue to do this work. Work like opening our first full service community school, partnering with Minneapolis Public Schools to offer wraparound services to get our families the resources that they need. Like listening and working with communities to make the nation's first memorial honoring survivors of sexual violence. Work like changing the name of our parkways to better honor the indigenous communities whose land we all live on. I'm proud to be your Minneapolis Park Commissioner. Serving has been the greatest responsibility of my life, and I take it very seriously. I'm asking for your support to continue being your at-large Park Commissioner. Thank you.
Our park system began 137 years ago. This is a legacy. I, Meg Forney, am passionate about the long view of our future legacy. The long view is why I am seeking re-election for one of your citywide park commissioners. The decisions we make today will impact our future generations. I will advocate for these long views. 1, to grow Minneapolis green space to support climate and environmental resiliency. Parks are the best tool for enhancing air and water quality and mitigating heat islands. Increasing vegetation is our best line of defense. 2, to invest in programming for youth by fostering youth employment that creates life skills to acquire sustainable jobs. To develop expertise in stewardship for our environment, and to prevent youth violence through building relationships. 3, to continue to cut barriers for equitable park access for all Minneapolis residents and families. In my short 2 terms, we have increased from 94% to 98% that every resident is within a 10-minute walk of a park. Now that the entire city has been park master planned, policies and practices can be enacted for long-term development and improvements. Lastly, to guide our parks in a financially sustainable manner through establishing empirical, equity-driven data matrix and diversifying our funding stream. Please visit my website to learn more about my campaign at megforney.org. I ask for your support for this legacy for our future generations.
Hello, Minneapolis DFLers. Steve Brandt here, a candidate for the Board of Estimate and Taxation. I'd like to tell you a little bit about me and why I'm running. I came to Minneapolis as a college freshman. I'm a little older than that now, but my love for the city has grown and I've put down roots here. This is the house where Linda and I have lived for the past 44 years and raised 2 sons. Minneapolis is going through some hard times right now, but I'm running because I want to contribute to helping this city recover. I also want to leave my 7-year-old granddaughter an even better city. I honestly believe that I'm the best qualified candidate for the Board of Estimate, the board that sets the annual limit on property tax increases. It also authorizes borrowing for infrastructure projects like street and sewer repairs. In my 40 years as a reporter, I did my own research, analyzed the facts I gathered, and presented my conclusions. That's what I intend to do as your voice on the Board of Estimate. I'm running because I know the city. As a reporter, I immersed myself in all 81 neighborhoods and got to know their residents. I know this city from many different perspectives, and I care for all residents. I'm running because I know city finances. I've read the city's budget from cover to cover, and I've analyzed the debates that shaped it. I've also served since 2017 on the city's capital budgeting task force. I'm the only candidate who has articulated a detailed approach to how I'd go about setting property taxes, one that starts with you before considering other factors. I'm asking you to run for City Convention delegate and to vote to endorse me for the Board of Estimate and Taxation. Vote experience. Vote Steve Brandt.
Hello, caucus goers and fellow DFLers. I'm Krista Mosing, and I'm the Stonewall DFL endorsed candidate for the Board of Estimate and Taxation. Thank you for taking the time to get involved, caucus, and build support for the kind of city you want Minneapolis to be. I have nearly a decade of experience analyzing and explaining public utility budgets. I will use that experience and knowledge to serve on the BET. My work will also be informed by my perspective as a trans woman and as someone with experience of childhood poverty. I grew up in subsidized housing, and I'm here today because my community invested in me. City budgets are how we express our values as a community. As a BET member, I will support your efforts to build the city we want to live in. I will work to make the policies that you support possible. I live in one of the many Minneapolis neighborhoods with a history of redlining and disinvestment. Every day, these neighborhoods bear the consequences of our city's public safety failures, and in 2020, they bore most of the catastrophic destruction precipitated by the murder of George Floyd. I will support the work to end the city's legacy of neglect and harm for these neighborhoods and the people who live and work in them. I earned Stonewall's endorsement for this race because I'm committed to the values of equity and inclusion embraced by our community. I will examine every act of the BET through this lens. As a BET member, I will amplify the voices of those who have historically been excluded or marginalized by city budgeting processes. My campaign is already building greater understanding of the BET and what it can do for the city. To learn more about me, my campaign, and about the BET, please visit my website at krista4.bet. There's an email Krista link if you want to contact me directly. Once again, I appreciate your time and involvement in this process. My name is Krista Mosing, and I ask humbly for your support and your endorsement to serve on the BET. Thank you.
Several days a week, I wake up at 4 a.m.
It's a little before 5, and I'm going to work. I've been doing this line of work for the last 13 years, working in a grocery store.
It's been scary this last year, especially as a frontline worker during a pandemic and getting an early case of COVID. The pandemic has impacted my family on a financial level. My husband recently lost his job in March. My mom, a retired elementary school teacher, needed support as well. I know what it's like to be a homeowner and a renter in Minneapolis. This is one of the reasons I'm running. I know that people are struggling right now. I can relate. We need to have a tax plan now that is cognizant of the fact that people are struggling and having a hard time paying rent or paying their property tax. The other element of why I'm running is to protect social services. We have to be careful to not cut taxes too much so we don't cut funding for our social programs. Social services are going to be essential to keeping our city going. Our city is in a crisis. I literally run to crises. The Minnesota Senate passed a resolution honoring me for saving a person's life. I pulled a person out of a burning car on Highway 94.
This is me, an everyday working class Minneapolitan. I see the tax plan, how it affects people's lives, and not as a number. Know that if you've struggled during this pandemic or known somebody who has struggled, know that I'll be fighting for all of us. Please join the campaign at www.az4bet.com. Thank you.